Well, hello.
Hi there, dearest. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Sitting here in my closet. Very joyful.
Well, we have seen an evolution in your closet, so this is the first episode of The Makers. However, we have recorded 5 or 6 episodes up to this point, interviews with people, but we thought it would be a good idea to have an episode where we talk about ourselves a little bit and introduce everyone to us. But the game started out with Josette's closet being her sound studio, and the lighting wasn't great, but now the lighting is drastically improved.
I've literally figured out how to hang my LED lights on a coat hanger, well, on a series of 3 coat hangers hanging from the top of the closet space. So, yeah, I mean, it really is very African in its ingenuity. So I'm proudly supporting my country here by recording from my closet. But I guess this is important, really, to find out, to let folks hear sort of why we're doing this and who we are and what the whole point of this podcast is. So it's delightful to be doing this with you today, Mr. Jackson.
I know. It's exciting to discuss a little bit about our history in terms of as I guess we'll say, as artists, as actors, as producers and as writers and directors. And so kind of get through some of that evolution. But also, this podcast came out of a lot of, I just love so much talking to people who we would consider creatives in whatever field, whether it be actors or writers or producers or even chefs and designers and things like that. Because I think everyone's process, for lack of a better word, is unique and interesting and something you can learn from.
Yeah. And I think also because of, my journey through creativity, sort of starting as this very, with this sort of singular obsessive focus with acting, and now becoming more open and embracing different aspects of myself, I'm really fascinated with how people get to where they are and kind of the journey of what that is, of stepping into power and stepping into their voice as creatives, and maybe how they start one place and think that's a thing and then suddenly end up as, something wildly different. So that's an aspect that I'm interested in discussing with people and kind of bringing that to an audience, and also just to remind folks that, we aren't one thing as creative beings. We kind of, if we think of ourselves as the creator, God creator, we've come here to create a life for ourselves. And I think the more expansive we can get with our expression of creativity in the world, I just think the richer your life becomes. So, just to give other people permission to do that and take that journey, I think is so important.
Yeah. I'm fascinated with people who have created a life in which they are doing the thing that they not only love to do, but were perhaps consider the thing that they were sort of meant to do.
Oh my God, yeah.
And that's really amazing. And, you and I had a very singular focus at one point in our life on acting, and couldn't really fathom a life that didn't have that as being the thing that brought us the most worth, the most self-worth.
Completely.
And as you grow up in, and mature in life, you start to realize that it's not about the thing that you think is the thing that you want to be famous for or whatever it is. It's more about what makes you the most fulfilled and the best version of yourself. And so finding more, the people who are doing that is a lot of fun.
Oh my God, it's so great. And to just have delicious, curious conversations with basically some of our best buddies is really wonderful.
Right. Yeah.
Selfishly, we're just talking to our friends. Well, for now, but yeah. So it's actually been, so far, obviously, as Matt was saying, we've recorded 5 episodes, and so far it's been such fun just kind of introducing one another to each other's friends, and our people that we admire and we love and stuff, and also just some crossovers, and this is just, really just a chance to have fun. So I hope everybody enjoys this as much as we are enjoying making these podcasts.
Too. It's cool. One of the cool things about life is when you get to have crossover amongst different, not just friends groups per se, but to have your different spheres of influence converge on one another. And so it's fun to have, most recently with your short film, for me to be able to introduce someone like Brent into your life is so wonderful. Brent Finley's a sound engineer supervising sound editor on a ton of shows like Ted Lasso and amongst others, and one of our favorite guys in the whole world. But to be able to introduce someone like him and how much he has enriched your life and your artistic pursuit, that's like, there's very few things in life that are that fulfilling, really.
It's so strange that you, it's not strange. Because I know you, but it's so wonderful that you have that feeling. I share it so much because I think that it is one of the greatest joys in life to create these connections between people, and especially when people, I don't know, like I really have fallen in love with Brent Findlay, and I think it's like it's so wonderful when you get the chance to create these beautiful friendships between your friends. Like it's my favorite thing when I sort of get a message from someone being like, "Oh, I'm hanging out with so and so," and it's like, "Oh God, like you love them as much as I do." Like it's so delicious to make these connections. So yeah, and I think creatively too, to be able to sort of share people we can collaborate with. It's just oh my God, it's the best. So
yeah, it just creates such a wide web of beautifully creative and interesting people who offer you
really
different perspectives, and it's really, really great. And our relationship began between with a mutual friend, which was also so strange in terms of which you'll hear on. So this will be our first episode. Our second episode is an interview with Amanda Payton, who is a brilliant actress who is just absolutely crushing it right now. But her now husband is one of my best friends from childhood, and so that's how I met her. And so when I was shooting a film here in Colorado, I don't even remember.
I stalked you, Matt. That's what happened. I stalked you. Okay, let's be honest about that. Yeah, I got sent the script by Amanda for the feature that Matt had written and was shooting. And she told me that there was this friend of Erin's, her now husband, who was making a film in Colorado, and he was working in a cheese factory to fund his film. And I was like, who the fuck is this person? Because I was like, that is probably the most badass thing I've ever heard. Like that is commitment to indie filmmaking like I haven't heard before. And so I was like, please send me the script. I just want to read it. And I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really good. Like this guy's really good. And I was working through some personal stuff at the time, and there was a role in there that I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to play that, because I felt like it was a part of myself that hadn't had a lot of playtime and space in the world. And I was like, I really want to just try. And so I just put an audition on tape and I just sent it to Matt like a real stalker, being like, if you'll have me, I want to come to Colorado and make your movie. Then I guess the rest is history.
Rest is history.
So funny.
Next thing you know, you're hopping in a car with my brother with a couple other actors from the airport, and on your way to, I think we met for the first time at the cemetery. That's where we were shooting
we
a
totally
scene.
did. We met for the first time at the cemetery. Oh God, that's so funny. That is ridiculous.
That is so funny.
Who knew it was going to make such a great story?
Yeah, great story, and also ended up being something that has grown into something like this, which is so much fun and enriched so many other aspects of our lives in terms of other relationships and friendships. You were there at when Sarah and I came out at the end of 2019 for my 40th birthday party. I sure
was. That was
which was a lot of fun.
Occasion. Yes,
that was really fun.
So
another
nice.
Convergence of tons of different aspects of my life, which was a lot of fun.
It's so fun. Isn't that the weirdest thing though? I used to have that. It used to give me like really deep-seated insecurity, anxiety when I thought about people meeting from different groups. Did you ever have that? Where I was like, oh my God, college friends are meeting, school friends are meeting, theater friends are meeting, and I would literally panic because I would think, oh God, what if I've been being a different person with all these different people and they're going to find me out? Because I always felt like I was a vastly different person, like, obviously with our aspects, but then, inevitably you'd have that occasion. It would be delightful. But I always used to get so scared about that. Not anymore. Oh, God.
I've had situations in which I feel like the friends that I introduced from different areas of my life became closer with each other, which I think is awesome. I love that, because they found they were like, oh, I like this, you like this is great. And so they become friends outside of, I don't have to be the tie that binds between,
kind of
friends
rad,
when you
actually,
introduce
when
them. Yeah.
So, I mean, look, I mentioned you working in a cheese factory in Colorado, but I think that for those of you who don't know you, it would be great to hear a little about what are you doing in the middle of Colorado, and what am I doing in the middle of LA? How did you end up there? Tell us a bit about your journey.
Well, Colorado, and in particular the town in which I live at the moment, is actually where I grew up, and so it's about we say 80 miles from Denver because it is. Denver's like mile 0, and Fort Morgan, where I live, is mile 80. So that's, it's where I grew up, and went to college in Minnesota, and had always loved acting. More or less was there for acting. My degree is actually in theology, in biblical studies.
Dude, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we need to have that conversation one day.
We should. We really should. Yeah, because the intent at one point in time in my life was to become a pastor.
No freaking ways.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
a trip my junior year around the world, literally around the world, went to England, India, Thailand, China, Malaysia, for 2 months. Literally, it changed my life completely.
My God,
It exposed me to, obviously, first time outside of the country, outside of the U.S., but also the first time that I was such a fervent Christian at the time. It was the first time that I ever saw someone with that same level of belief in other religions, be it Hindu or Buddhist or whatever it may be.
That must have been
Muslim in
mind
particular.
blowing. Good God.
Absolutely. And having lived so my town is actually quite diverse in terms of culture and such, which is really unique and people don't realize especially about like farm towns. It's very diverse because of the history of migrant working and factory working and things like that. It brings a lot of different people from around the world to your area. And so when I moved to Minnesota, it was a massive culture shock because everyone was white and everyone all looked the same, and all from small towns in Wisconsin and Minnesota and Iowa. And so and they talked weird, which was kind of like the Minnesota accent I'd never heard before.
I love the Minnesota accent so much.
Yeah,
so
for
funny.
sure. I was like, what are you saying? I don't understand that word. And so it was actually more of a culture shock than my own culture
I'm
here.
sure. Yeah.
And so going overseas, times that by 1,000, living in India for I think I was there for like 3 weeks or so.
No way.
And I mean, there couldn't be anything different from suburban Minnesota, suburban Minneapolis
Hell
to
no.
the middle of nowhere in India.
Trying to avoid running over holy cows, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Because I come from a place where all you do is eat them.
Yeah.
And so very interesting. So anyway, flash forward to, about a decade and a half later, I had since sort of adjusted my worldview quite a lot, and decided it was time to do what I really want to do. And acting was always one of those things that I did, but I never really put my heart and soul into it. I feel like I just always knew in my heart that I was never meant to be a gun for hire, which is not what actors always become. They,
Sure.
People, when you find success in anything, you become all these things. But I really wanted to build something for myself, a business for myself. And I think I'd always wanted to. I just never had the guts to, because in my mind, my identity was actor living in LA, Matt Jackson.
Right.
So that was very important to me to maintain that. So after a series of events, I decided, you know what? Let's move home, move to Fort Morgan, and just 6 weeks, feel it out, see what happens. But there's this tiny thing in my head as I'm sitting in my house in LA on the last night that I'm there before leaving. My dogs are on the couch with me. That said, if you move there, get a job at the cheese factory. It's a string cheese factory, which we'll talk about.
I love string cheese.
Yeah,
It's so
everyone does.
happy-making.
No one doesn't smile when I say I worked in a string cheese factory.
It's so
impossible. Yeah. And move there, and it's going to happen.
Wow.
What you want is going to happen. And so that's precisely what I did. And initially it was to write the script for the feature, which never, really took, there's no way to explain to a person who's never done this before how I bit off way more than I could chew.
Yeah.
To try to shoot a feature.
Yeah. I have so much admiration for even beginning to do that. It's such a huge undertaking.
Yeah,
I think it's like
it
a
is.
5-minute short film is a huge undertaking, and no one really gets how
yeah.
much goes into it, and you were like, I'm going to just go for 95 minutes and see how we go. It's like,
Right.
wow,
Yeah,
man.
see what happens.
Yeah. Wow.
But I think the bigger lesson in that was the value of having a singular purpose and having a goal in mind and achieving that goal. And so while the film still lives, on a hard drive at the moment, and it may see life someday, and I want it to.
Yeah.
The bigger lesson was that I was willing to take the massive risk to do such a thing, to save the money, to visualize, to affirm, and use those techniques that I've been learning forever on how to create the life that you want, and made it happen. And so,
well, and by the way, also like school fees. I mean, I hate to say it, but like you paid school fees. Like it's that was your education in filmmaking.
Yes.
That was like cool.
Yes.
I'm just gonna go out there and make it. And like I bet that there's things you still use in your day-to-day existence now that you've learned by doing that. Even just getting familiar with equipment and like how to set up shot, like all that stuff.
100%. I couldn't agree more that that's exactly how I look at anything that doesn't pan out, that you spend a lot of money on. I consider it the price of entry. I just consider it the price of the education, and that's it. Because what I learned from that process, and from the web series that I wrote and directed in LA also, was those two experiences were basically just film school in a 6-week period, and everything else from there is just building on that experience.
Yeah.
And it's very important. So what happened was I started, I've always loved commercials, and I always would find myself on my phone during the show or the TV show or whatever, or, even back in the day, just not paying attention. And then the commercials came on and I would watch them, and I didn't know if that was okay or not.
That is so funny. Everyone else is like dreading the commercials, and you're sitting there waiting for them.
I love them.
I love it. That's so good.
And a lot of it, I think, comes from, I like the idea of telling a story in a short, tiny little period of time.
Yeah.
And I came from the world of improv. That was the biggest chunk of my acting life, was in improv and sketch. And so I like, having to tell a story in a very tight window. And so that's why it just suits me, I think. So I started 9 Stories Creative, my, production company, we're about like 80% production and 19% creative in terms of writing it, and giving strategy, and then maybe like, a couple percent of media, which, is essentially spending the client's dollars on Facebook and Instagram and TV and all that kind of stuff. So, and I love it. I love it so much. Going from the cheese factory, which gave me so much purpose, and I will be so forever grateful to Leprino Foods, which is the name of it. It taught me certain levels, because I started as general labor, and I left as someone in the supervisor.
Of course you did.
Team. Yeah. Well, to be fair, if you seem like you've got like, a third of a brain, that they're going to want to get you up the ladder as fast as possible. Yeah. But it created an abundance of financial wealth that I could spend to create the company. It created a tremendous amount of leadership skills that I had, but I was developing them there. And then also they became a client as well. So it was one of those things that I was able to get used to the idea of working in super high stress, super, high functioning moments. No one will, here's the thing. I'll stop rambling for a sec, but no one will ever understand. No one will ever understand how hard that job was on any level, whether it was the base level grunt work up to what I did. No one will ever understand it unless you do it, because I was part chemist, part engineer, part mechanic, and part babysitter, problem solver. We're talking about like life-threatening situations that I had to handle on a fairly regular basis to keep people safe from, dying, to make sure that everything went according to plan, while running a business that was making, $200,000-$300,000 a day.
It's so wild when you talk about it like that. When you say like this high pressure situation and like people's lives are at risk, because it's like when you walk through the grocery store and pick up a piece of string cheese, ain't nobody thinking that somebody could have died for this cheese, And I think it's funny because we always are quick to say that about, well, it's not open heart surgery and it's not that serious. But it's like, no, actually it is. And it's pretty epic that you got to sort of cut your teeth as a leader in an environment that has stakes like that. Because I think that there are very few environments that give you that opportunity to really sort of think on your feet, I guess, and sort of hone your intuitive capacity, and and it sounds like that really gave you that opportunity. So it's so beautiful, actually, that first of all that you had because here's the thing, not a lot of people are going to have the humility to leave Los Angeles and this dream of being an actor and go and work in a cheese factory. Like I think that was the thing that, well, it is the thing I first fell in love with about you, is that before I knew you, I knew that about you, and that was what drew me to you, because I was like, if this guy's going to be doing this to create his art, like I think it's just so beautiful. It's just it speaks to your humanity and your capacity for empathy and just like understanding of other people's lives, that I think is so important.
We hope you love listening to the Makers podcast as much as we love making it.
And if you would like to show your support and keep us going and keep us making magic and bringing these gorgeous creative conversations to you, perhaps you'd consider becoming a contributor to the Makers podcast. If you'd like to do so,
visit anchor.fm/themakers/support to get started. And now, back to the show. But there was a certain level of brokenness that I had to experience to be willing to attempt that level of humility, because I was at a point in my life in which I did not want to be seen or heard or talked to or known outside of, a very select few people. And so going to a factory while I was, in the sort of the general labor aspect of it, and just staying under the radar and just keep your head down, because factories are loud and they're oppressive and they're sweaty and hot. Even though this one was freezing cold, but you're also hot because you're working so hard.
Yeah,
I liked that, and I needed that. I needed to allow that brokenness level to sort of like dissipate out of my body until I was ready to begin to be the leader that I was really meant to be. Yeah. And it took some time, but I got there.
It's like a full hero's journey. It's so cool. It really is.
I would love to be in the Joseph Campbell camp, but I think that's why we gravitate towards these other creatives though, right? Is because we want to see what their journey has been like and how they got where they are. And I think that level of humility, while it's difficult to like accept because it feels like hubris when you say it, I think that is just a necessity to finding the true like success, the true level of power and that you want in your life. Is you have to say, I'm not the smartest in the room. I'm not the best at this job. Yeah. I'm not the person that I need to be. I need to be somebody greater. I need to be somebody better.
Well, I think there's also this thing that's so important, and the thing I've experienced, like I had to confront entitlement in my life a lot. Like I think that was really what created the shift for me in my life, was a lot of like real reckoning with entitlement and sort of looking at like, being a successful person somewhere else and coming and expecting it would be the same somewhere. It really messes you up. Like, and it puts you in a position where you kind of can't do the work you need to do to be able to get that thing, strangely. And I think that when I was able to sort of reckon with my entitlement, it unlocked things. It's also it was for me a permission to be bad at something. And I think like for me to become more of myself, I had to learn how to be other things. And to learn how to be other things, you got to suck at them first. Like I had to write some really shit scripts. I had to put a bunch of really bad words down on a paper and like be, oh wow, I'm fucking bad at this. And it's really uncomfortable and I don't like it. But I could only get to a level of excellence from that bad place. And I think that's, man, like it's all about humility and letting go of the way the ego sort of holds you in that place, It's so toxic. So yeah,
definitely. I think that there's a lot of I think, it's funny because humility and self-loathing are sometimes talked about in the same place. The thing is, I had no humility and a ton of self-loathing. And so the self-loathing had to go away and the humility had to increase. And so it's not the same thing. Self-deprecating is not the same thing as humility. No. All of those things. And so I was good at self-deprecating, which I didn't realize is just bad self-talk.
Yeah, of course.
When you're self-deprecating and you're talking badly about yourself in your own mind, that's actually the opposite of humility, in the sense of humility says, I am nothing, but I'm trying my best. Whereas the other one is, I'm a piece of shit, and it just keeps you down. And you don't want that one. That's the bad one.
Of course not. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not striving for that. That's for damn sure. It's incredible though that it's like that the humility, that your capacity for all of that is now, people would look at it and maybe not know the story, and they'd look at it and think like, wow, this guy's got this wildly successful creative agency and making all this amazing work. And it's so funny how quick people are to look at that and take that as the full story, without looking at like what the journey is to get to that place. And again, I guess why we're interested in having these conversations, because I think it is, we can never look at things in just one way or in isolation. We have to look at the whole picture,
Absolutely. And to think about it from that person's perspective. When I look at someone that I think, we've talked to a lot of people so far, and we're going to continue. I look at a person and I say, this person is so successful. They have such a great career. They've produced this amazing movie that I love. But the thing is, that person is still just trying to keep going and trying to keep making and trying to keep upping the game, in their own mind. And it's not a bad thing. People are like, oh, you're never satisfied. No, it's not that. It's more that you want to become a better, more successful version of yourself. And so we all are in that world trying to get there. And so it's fun for us to meet people in this singular moment in time. And then 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, we get to see their, things continue to grow and get bigger. And
I love that. I love that ability to sort of, I think I've said it to a couple of our people, or maybe, I can't remember, maybe it was Amanda, but I love this ability to sort of witness one another, in moments and times, and have those moments where you come together and connect, and then everybody sort of goes out and exponentially evolves and grows from there. And it's so great to have those little touchstone moments to sort of be like, hey, I remember this. I remember when you were complaining or worried about this thing, and now it's like, now look what your problems are. It's like, because by the way, there's always going to be problems at every level, it's like,
Never
oh my
stops.
God, you get to the next level and then it's like, oh shit, now there's a whole other set of problems I didn't anticipate. Let me not block them though. I welcome them.
Absolutely.
It's funny.
But so, so I want to talk about your career a lot, actually. So when I do a really bad job of getting to know a person before I get to know them. I really love to meet the person and get to know the person. And then I find out more about them. And you and I have been friends for a few years now. But until we started doing this podcast, which is another thing where I have to look, at this point, we have to look up people's lives and careers and to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's just as fun, but a lot of times it's fun to just get to know the person for the person. And so when we were preparing to do our podcast, I was like, I should just Google you. And so I Googled you, and it was fascinating because you were such a big deal in South Africa.
Oh my God, Matt, you're very kind.
And it was so much fun to see all of these ads and commercials, and here's my skincare routine and all the things that a celebrity does. I was like, oh, my friend Josette's kind of a big deal in her home country.
Let's quantify that or qualify that for a moment, because that was about 10 years ago. And I think probably no one in South Africa even remembers me at this stage. No, I mean, look, so what Matt's referring to is I had a moment of success in my career where I guess I should take you back. I started as a theatre kid. I always was a theatre kid. And I just knew that I wanted to act my whole life. Well, after I wanted to be a ballet dancer, and then, very quickly realized my thighs were not going to fit into the tutus and was like, oh, fuck, I better find something else. So I very quickly decided acting was the thing, and studied acting. And we didn't really have very much film and television in the city that I'm from. So I came up in the theatre community. I started a production company straight out of college, and I made theatre and had a lot of success, and then decided I wanted to get into television and film, because that was always really, if I'm honest, what I wanted to do. And I moved to Johannesburg, the sort of biggest city in South Africa. And it was not a long time before I sort of landed some pretty big success, which was incredible. And just as I was speaking it out, like manifestationally, like I'm going to move there and book a job, and I'd spoken about booking a specific television show, and the dream was even bigger. Like it ended up being the first location-based drama series that they'd shot in South Africa that was like filmed in HD and like high quality, and it was the most money anyone had ever spent on a TV show, and I managed to get a really big role, and it was incredible. Like I was cast alongside all these great South African actors who I sort of was just in awe of, and I was just this theater kid being like, oh God, this is really overwhelming and scary. But yeah, from there, it was just a very incredible ride. Like I think I had and in some ways it might have been what messed me up in the long run, because it was like the success came pretty easily in that way, and I had, I was getting offers for feature films, and I was, doing commercials alongside all of that, and there were product endorsements, and all the stuff that comes with a celebrity and magazine covers and stuff. And then I decided, like, I always knew America was the goal. Los Angeles was always the goal. Although I didn't even know it was Los Angeles. I just knew it was Hollywood. So like literally when I moved to LA, I like came and lived in Hollywood, because I was like, that's where they make actors, right?
Right.
And if anyone knows Hollywood, you really don't really want to live there. It's kind of not that nice.
No.
It's a pretty
How
shitty
disappointed
neighborhood.
were you by the...
Dude, by the Walk of Fame, I was like, what is this? Like, does not look like this during Oscar season. What is happening?
Nope.
So yeah, anyway, I kind of, I pieced out and headed to LA and arrived and thought, yeah, this will be great. Like within a year, I'm sure I'm going to be wildly famous and, the next Meryl Streep. That was the dream. Well, it didn't turn out that way. Yeah, it was a very humbling, incredible, amazing journey, and it was not what I expected. I think I came that's why I say I think that success sort of messed me up in a way, because I had this very clear idea that it was just gonna happen, But I had a bunch
But you had a couple of moments.
Well, I did. I had it.
You?
I booked some really lovely, fun things. Like I booked a Warner Brothers picture, and I, like a small role on that, and I booked, like a top of episode guest on a couple of TV shows, and there were these sort of early successes, and I thought, oh, great, like it's all ticking along nicely. But there was this undercurrent within me that was not ticking along nicely. There was a lot of there was eating disorders and major insecurities and like all these things that I'd sort of built this castle on a pile of sand, and the sand was very quickly in this unfamiliar territory and in this place where I kept striving and trying and desperately trying to be better for what I thought was required for success in this town. The sand was very quickly collapsing. And so there was a major moment where it shifted, and I started to do a lot of self-discovery and, unpack who I was. And I think what I figured out, ultimately, in this it's 9 years now I've lived in LA, this 9-year journey is really just that I think acting was what I thought would give me power and what I thought would give me agency and a voice and a place in the world, because it was so shiny in a way. And I think really what I was pursuing was my authentic power, but I had got it wrong. I think while acting still, of course, my God, I still pursue acting and I still audition and have a fun time working with friends whenever I can. Acting very much is just like it's the cherry on the cake for me now, and I think what I've come to understand once I did the digging was that I just have so much more to say and so much more capacity for creativity. And so the writing has become a thing, and directing and producing and making, and really from a place of what's inside, and not wanting to amplify other people's visions as much as like have my own. I think that's really been the journey. That's the short story.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story.
But yeah, so it's funny when you Google it and then you're like, oh yeah, you're a big deal. And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I was at one point, but I don't even know that woman anymore. That's what's so strange. She's she's a part of me that exists as like she's like a wind behind my back now. She's an energy that propels me forward, but she isn't me at all anymore. She's been stripped away, which is
I think
great.
that some people it's amazing, because that's exactly how I feel about the guy who was sitting in casting agents' offices and waiting in rooms and signing in and out on a daily basis. It was just some people are built for it, and I clearly was not. And because we talked to Amanda, And she is built for this. Like
she really is.
She just runs the show. She just knows how to audition, how to nail the part, how to act, and how to just be the best actor that she can be on any given day, on any given type of show or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I guess at the end of the day, I was built for something completely different, and all are valid and all are beautiful.
Of course.
And I mean, part of me is still, envious of like a life like hers, because she has such a, I'm fascinated with people who are masters at their thing.
Well, and also when it's like so clear, right? When it's like, I do this
Yeah.
thing, I do this thing, and I do this thing, and then like it creates that thing. It seems like such a, what a relief to know that you just do those things and then it works out. Now, granted, obviously there's a lot more to it than that. And, I think the strangeness of an acting career, particularly in Los Angeles, is that you really do have to, it's so much about relationships and creating relationships with people, but then it's also so much about stars aligning, because, I mean, you've cast a bunch of projects, I've cast projects. It's like you sit there and it's very obvious who the person is. And it's not that you haven't seen 25 other very talented people. It's like, it's just that one person makes sense for that role, And even now, like I'm starting to put together a feature film this year and, looking at casting. But like I wrote this movie with such a clear idea of who these people are that it's like, I only have like 3 picks. That people are like, okay, who do you want to go out to offer on these things? And I'm like, well, I really only have 3 people that I want for that. I mean, it's actually 1, if I'm honest. So I'm hoping to gosh that person says yes, because it's, it's so clear to me. And I think that's the hardness. But then, the nice part about it, or the part that feels kind of calming in a way, is you just know what you're doing. You wait, you get your auditions, you learn your lines, you do a good job, you book, it's just, there's a method to it almost.
It's almost like being a chef in a way. I've worked with so many brilliant chefs who make food that you taste and you're like, what? How did you do this? And to them, they're just like, they've worked very hard. They continue to work crazy hard, just like any actor who's finding success.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they were like, well, I had these 4 ingredients, and so I made this thing that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's what actors do. I think they just have the ingredients inside of them, and they put one in ahead of the other, and this one and that one, and there you go. Bada boom, they got a great, great audition or a great, role or whatever it is.
It's interesting. I think the one thing I will say that has shifted in a big way for me, especially with acting, because it is such a huge part of who I am still. And for the longest time was my only identity, really. The only one I was prepared to acknowledge, if I'm honest. It's interesting because I was so obsessed with being great at it. I think that was my main thing. I just would do anything to be a great actor. And I think the second I was like, I'm okay just to be good at this, or I'm okay to kind of even suck at it. It's given me so much more freedom and so much more space to just be able to like have fun with it, and remember why I loved this in the first place. Because I think that's the thing, is when we, especially with creative pursuits, it's, like what you're saying about that chef having those 4 ingredients. It's like, there's something really playful about that, being like, I've got 4 ingredients. Well, what can I do with it? There's this kind of, hey, like, what could it be? It could be anything. And I think that when we can approach it in that way, it gives us so much more freedom. So yeah, I will say I think that's been a shift for me with acting that I'm really enjoying, actually. I'm having so much fun now with it in a way that my God, I suck the life out of it. I suck the living life out of it. Oh, God. Anyway, yeah, it's interesting.
So when you when you're introduced to someone new, because that's a question you always get, so what do you do?
Oh, my God, I don't know how to answer that question. How do you answer that question? Do you know what? It's actually funny. I think in some ways I say the thing which is terrible, but I probably say the thing I think that'll impress them the most or make them connect with me the easiest. I'm like, oh, they're this person? Cool, I'm a writer, I'm a director, actor, producer, I don't know. It's strange. Because I also have this interesting thing where I find, sometimes with my actor friends, like they have a hard time asking me questions about writing, or they have a hard time asking me questions about directing. I sometimes feel like I can have acting conversations with them. And with like writing friends, I'm like, oh, I have writing conversations with you because they don't really get the acting thing. It's like, it's funny. So I don't know, maybe I'm just morphing myself to whoever my audience is, which is probably not ideal. What do you say?
Well, it's what makes you a good actor.
Probably. Shifty.
Yeah. Well, it's relatively easy for me at this point in time. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I am so excited to say what I say, because in the past I was always saying I'm an actor, but I also work at this restaurant.
Yes.
Well, I'm a bartender, but I also am trying to be an actor or whatever. There are always caveats. And even up until 2 years ago, it was, well, I make commercials and videos and promos and stuff, but I also work at this cheese factory.
Make string cheese. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's fun to singularly say, I own an ad agency. That's what I say.
Oh, dude,
and
it's so great.
and a lot of times people, but that can be perplexing sometimes. They're like, wait, what do you mean? And so to say, well, like commercials you see on TV, like I make those. Like that's basically, the short answer. And that usually gets people to say, and then of course there's always, well, what have I seen that you've done? And so it's usually, most of the bigger things are regional. But what's cool is that sometimes they're just seen by a ton of people, and people are like, and I'm getting barrages of texts and, dude, I saw the commercial you made or whatever. And
That's so cool.
it's very satisfying. It's very fun. But it's also, I think just the joy is being able to say, the subtext is, what do? I do exactly what I want to do at this point, at this stage in my life. And that's very exciting.
Yeah, I feel the same. I must say, I feel the same. It feels like, probably for the last 2 years, I would say, I feel like I can breathe finally in where I am on the planet. Like I feel like my feet are now rooted in a way, and with a sense of where I'm going in a way that I kind of just never had, not authentically, I think I had it. I had a version of it that I thought the world would appreciate and would work for me, but this feels just, oh God, I feel like I can, like freedom. I feel like I'm free, which is really a wonderful thing to be able to say.
It's amazing. Well, so you've written a script recently that you've been writing for a long time, but this particular was kind of one of the first where you sort of you were working within the structure of people who had already, were producing it, and you were brought on as the writer of the script. That's a really scary place to be as a person who just writes, because we all, like, the first time I wrote a commercial, I was like, I'm writing a commercial for this product.
Yeah.
They have to terrifying. Like it, and then I have to make it. It's really scary. How did you conjure up the confidence to sort of like put away like for lack of a better word, like the freelance, person heart, and say, I'm writing this with purpose, for somebody, to the direction that it's going?
That's such a good question, because I think the thing is, I'm such a meaning person. Like, I'm such a purpose-driven person that, like, oh, that was a beautiful alliteration. Say it again. Purpose-driven person. Say it again. I think I don't think I can do things in life without meaning. I think I have a hard time with it. I have a hard time with superficial conversations. I have a hard time with, like, I don't know, meaningless engagements, and so. Oh my gosh, if I'm going to dedicate a year of my life to writing something, which ultimately it did turn out to be a full year, this project, I really needed to find like a reason for it, like what was this doing, either actually for myself. I had to figure out like why I needed to write this. And then I don't think you can get over the terror. I just did it terrified, if I'm honest. I think I was... Because, in the real world of writing and for Hollywood, you can get hired on a project, and then they can contract you to, sort of whatever it is, 3 drafts, say, and a polish or whatever your contract is. But they can also read your first draft and think, meh, we don't really love what she's done with this, and they can give it to somebody else. So if I'm honest, once I'd found my kind of reason for writing this and, my vision for it and what I wanted to do with it, I was absolutely terrified the whole time that I was just going to get fired. And everyone was like, how's it going? And I was like, well, But I would have to, in those moments of sitting down and actually doing the writing work, I would have to put that aside, enter into the world, which I do anyway. I've got to find a quiet space, and I'm always there for about 4 or 5 hours when I'm in the actual writing stage, 4 or 5 hours a day. And it's got to be quiet. It's got to be alone. I can't have someone knocking on the door saying, do you want a cup of tea? It's a problem. So I really have to isolate. And then when I get to that space and I can kind of find my way in, I'm not thinking about the world anymore. I'm thinking about the world of the story, so that's helpful. But Oh my gosh, yes. At nighttime, even when I delivered the script, I thought, well, that was fun.
Right.
If they hire someone else now, I guess I did as good as I could.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I think that really is the whole thing for me. Is I'm always just trying to do it as best as I can, so that I know when I hand it over, I've done everything I can do.
Yeah.
So that I'm not going, oh well, I could have done better, and then I feel fine about it. But it was terrifying. And this was the first time I've done it. I've written, countless scripts for myself, but this is the first time somebody sort of paid me to write something that they are interested in bringing into the world. In a way, it's nice. It's a nice position to be in, because you know that now these producers are already invested in making this movie. It's like you've jumped a step, because now normally with this, if you've written a script for hire, you then got to try and make the sale and get somebody to get interested. Whereas, this is a kind of nice bypass. But yeah, it was terrifying. It was terrifying.
I don't know if there's any person in a creative field, in particular in entertainment business, as whether it's actor, writers, directors, whatever, producers even, who don't think that at some point in time, someone's going to walk up, tap them on the shoulder and be like, we're sorry, we made a bit of a mistake. You're not supposed to be here.
Completely.
Yeah. Right?
It's the worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst. And it's strange, because I can go back and forth. Like sometimes I can feel pretty confident about something. And then sometimes I can feel completely like terrified by it. But the one thing I will say that I'm listening to regularly, and I think I have to, otherwise I lose my way completely, is just my intuition, So there were moments in this process where, and it's a biopic effectively. It's based on a true story. So I was having to sort of, do a lot of research and then solve ways of telling this sort of very epic narrative in 110 pages. And there were moments when I would have problems with the story, and I would struggle to find, what is the solution? How am I going to fix this? How am I going to do this? And you know how this goes when you're trying to solve creative problems. Then I would think about it in the bath, and while I'm walking the dog, and while I'm making dinner, and then all of a sudden it would come to me like a lightning bolt from God, which is just the biggest gift. And I feel high on the solution, and I'm just like, oh my God, I've done it. And then I'll race to go and like quickly put it down on a piece of paper before it goes away. But those are the moments when my whole body sort of resonates, when I feel like goosebumps coming, and I'm like, oh, I know that's I don't doubt those things. I know that those things are going to work, because I feel like they've come from somewhere else. They've not come from me, So
well, that's a beautiful transition into exactly what I wanted to talk about, is where does that come from as a writer? As a person who's writing a script, there's an evolution of ideas and characters and all this stuff, but where does that inspiration come from? Because we've got people who believe that there is this cosmic connectivity between all of us. There's the muse, or 100% inside of you. Where do you feel like those creative ideas come from when writing like that?
Oh my God, I love this. I love talking about this so much.
Right.
I feel like it's of God. I know people call God other things, higher self, spirit, the universe, whatever. I say God, it's just easy. But he's definitely not an old white man sitting on a chair. He's definitely just like not even a he. It's divinity to me. It's divine. I think the act of creation is what we are here to do on the planet. And I think when you are involved in creating anything, a meal, a script, acting a role, whatever it is, you're engaging with your God self, your divine self. I think it's the moment that we are closest to God, because we are being creators, which is what God is, it's the whole point. So to me, I always feel like the more I can get out of my mind, and the more I can get into the feeling, the body space, and that the better chance I have of kind of connecting with that muse, as it were. I can't. Obviously, there's you've said this before, Matt, where it's like you're filtering it all through your experience. It's all coming through you and what you know and what you've learned and what you've experienced. But and I agree with that. But I definitely do think that it's divinity, the highest form of divinity. What do you think? Where's yours coming from?
I think that
because we're allowed to disagree. That's the joy of being a human.
Right. Yeah. I don't disagree. I think I agree in a different way, because it's funny, because I one of the things that I truly believe in is in the collective consciousness. I believe that we are all, as human beings, and really all as life forms, from the smallest to the top of the food chain, we're all interconnected in a way that I don't think that we'll ever truly understand because we all come from the same place and the same earth. And it's important to recognize that. Yeah. And so we're going to all have same thoughts and same ideas and things like that. And so, which is hilarious because I've mentioned it before to you where I've had when I write scripts, when I write commercials, when I write whatever I'm writing, I will just write whatever comes to mind and I will just let it rip and just go. And I don't judge my ideas. I don't cut anything. I don't edit anything. I just wait until it's all out. And then we refine the ideas. And so a lot of times I'll be writing and I'll be like, this is perfect. This is hilarious. This is the best thing I've ever written. And then I'll realize this is from Three Amigos.
No,
or
stop
this
it.
is from Ghostbusters. Yeah, 100%. So the influences are there. Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. But then
basically your brain is a plagiarizer. Your brain is a plagiarizing asshole. That's what you're telling me.
Absolutely. Yeah. But the plagiarism has to come out for me to get to the fresh ideas, to get to the new ideas, the new concepts and everything. And so I used to write, I went through the whole Groundlings program, and so I wrote sketches all the time. I never watched Saturday Night Live. It was just not a part of my comedy ecosystem. And so frequently I would bring a sketch, we would put it up. It was funny, everyone laughed. But the problem was if someone was like, that was kind of on SNL 3 weeks ago or whatever. Way. And that's where I started to really believe in the collective consciousness, that there is this comedy about life that we're all sharing in. And so my idea is not a perfectly unique idea by comparison to someone else who's maybe having a similar experience on the other side of the planet. Yeah. And so I think that it's a blend of all the things. I think that there is a muse in terms of it's that voice inside yourself that you're letting go free. Yeah. How else do you explain that characters as you're writing take on a life of their own as you're writing? They begin to speak for themselves.
They do. I hear them in my head. It's very disturbing sometimes because they'll wake me up. Like if I'm deep in the process, they will wake me up at night, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to sleep.
So do you go write? Do you go write when
I usually
happens?
I'll just keep my phone next to my bed, which I realize is not great for your mental health. But I definitely just have like a note section of my phone, and if I hear things on a walk or something, or while I'm sleeping, I'll just add them into the note section because they do sometimes say things that end up in the script. So I kind of have to be listening. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that what you're saying. And it's funny also because Liz Gilbert, who I adore, speaks a lot about, she has that book called Big Magic, which is one of the most delicious reads for any creative being. Well, just any being on the planet really should read that. It's so delightful. But she speaks about where creativity comes from. And she'll say how she believes that like an idea, it comes to you for a moment, it picks you, the idea picks you. And if you don't act on it, you don't do something with it, like that idea will go and find somebody else. And she's got a great story in there about how she was writing. She had found this idea for a book set in the Amazon, like an obscure idea that she got about this woman from, I want to say it's Minnesota, but I might be wrong. I'm probably telling the story badly. But anyway, she gets the story set for this woman in Minnesota who has to go to Brazil. And she starts doing all the research, and then something else comes up, and she puts the book away in a cupboard. And 2 years later, she meets another writer whose name I forget, who's this brilliant novelist, who is writing a book about the exact same thing. Wow. And Liz was like, holy shit, like you can't describe this, you can't explain it. Like it was so down to the minute little details. And she was like, that was the idea, leaving me and going and finding a worthy person who's actually going to execute it. So it's crazy to me.
That's amazing.
Which is why, she calls it big magic. I do too. It's magic. This stuff to me is the stuff of magic. It really is.
Have you experienced that before? Because I certainly have. I think we all have that moment where you hear people say, I thought of Uber before Uber. And I think that's, because the difference between success and, I won't say failure, just the difference between success and not having the success is action. It's always action. And so the whether you had the idea and acted on it, it gives you exponentially more potential for success as opposed to having the idea and not acting on it and then regretting it later. I think that there is definitely, we're all floating around. Yeah. And like either whether it's the idea leaving to someone else who's going to act on it, or if it's just because we all ultimately come from the same sort of stock.
I think so.
Those ideas go away.
I think so. I mean, I think we are all sharing a consciousness. We have to be, otherwise none of this makes any goddamn sense. But I did have it actually once where a friend of mine and I sat down and we brainstormed this brilliant show. Like we were like, this is going to be so amazing. It's going to be so good. And actually, it was kind of good. I wish we'd written it, but it was so specific. And years later, of course, we'd never ended up doing it. And it was before I was actively writing. I was just sort of still trying to find my way into that world. And years later, I was watching a TV show and I saw a scene, the way they had set up the set and the way this whole thing functioned. And I was like, you have to be fucking kidding me. It was exactly what we'd come up with. And I messaged her being like, you have to watch this movie because they've literally got our idea. We were completely blown away by it. But I mean, it's so true. Like that stuff is happening all the time. Which is why if you get a good one, my God, please write it. Like, do something with it. Do something with it because it's gold.
Get it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, I've had situations where something that I have made got into someone else's hands and they used it, not necessarily to say that it was theirs, but just things like that have happened, which, I kind of, to a certain extent, have this perspective that was helped with a friend of mine because I kind of was texting with him. I was like, hey, this thing happened. Like, what do you think? And this and that. And his thought was really interesting. And it's kind of along the same lines where it's like, we have this moment of time to make the thing that we made as big as possible. And if little chunks of it are getting nibbled at here and there along the way, I just didn't make it as best as it could be, and whether things get, whether that's in the collective consciousness or if someone sees a video and they're like, ooh, I like that idea, I'm going to make it better. If they made it better, then shame on me. I just didn't make it the best version that I possibly could.
Well, I think it's also, I mean, I agree with you, but then I also think it's to add to it. I think it's like, well, it depends. Sometimes things are better through somebody else's, or just more impactful or more, I don't know what, through somebody else's lens, like I think there's, I often thought about that, like, oh God, like how do I write something original? How do I come up with something that no one's ever done before? And I think at this point, honest to gosh, it's an impossibility because I think everything's been done before. We know this, like we know this. I don't know, there's that whole postmodernism theory where it's like there are only 9 or 7 stories. Is it 9? I think it's 9.
So I think 9.
Yeah,
right?
where it's like there's only 9 stories in the whole world. So it's like we've basically just been cycling through them for all of eternity. And I feel like, when you get an idea, the thing that makes it unique is your lens, is your voice, is the way you are bringing it into the world. The things you've seen and done and come to know, I think, is what informs that, the thing being the thing that it is. It's why I love to own that in a way, because it frees you up from worrying so much about things. Where it's like, if I am the person they choose to act this part, it's because I am the person that's meant to act this part. Like I am the person who's going to give the life to this character that nobody else can. If I'm the writer of this project, it's because I'm the custodian of this story, because it needs to come through me. I don't know. Somehow having that higher belief in a way frees me from the human doubt,
It's a huge honor to be the one chosen.
I think
for projects.
I think so.
I think whether it's as an actor or as the writer or whatever it is, I think that it's amazing because of all the billions of people on Earth. I get to do this.
Do you know what's so cool
feeling
about it too is that it's like it's funny because I experienced this with the short film. Like I made some creative choices on that film, excuse me, and someone said, I can't remember who it was, but being like, oh my God, that's so cool that you chose to like do this and this, and you chose to like only put music like right at the end, like you had the whole thing in silence. And I was like, well, yeah, obviously. I'm like, why would you put music over that?
Right.
And it was the first time that it occurred to me that like the things that we're doing organically without thinking that are obvious to us are actually the things that are our magic. They are what make us, There's a thing that I'm going to do that is so obvious to me that it doesn't even feel like I'm working particularly hard or struggling to come up with it, but that is my genius in a weird way,
Yeah.
So I'm kind of enjoying exploring that a little bit, like even with my scripts when I pass them, because I have a group of very kind, supportive, incredible human beings around me who just obviously love me enough to read my work before I sort of hand it out to the world and stuff. I have these gatekeepers, as it were,
Right.
my treasured group. And, you know, whenever they're reading things, they're always going like, wow, this, and oh my gosh, that. And the more they're starting to comment on things, I'm starting to see a pattern and starting to see, oh, there actually are specific things that I do that I'm starting to realize are uniquely me and are my, you know, my thing in a way. Why I would get chosen. It's interesting.
And are those things that you want to hold on to and continue to be part of the you brand, or do you feel like those are things that you eventually want to evolve and break open and change?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know who I'm going to be next week. It's like, if I think about the person I was 9 years ago, I'm like, whoa, what a relief that's not me anymore. So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope to keep deepening my relationship with the stuff that I'm good at, and I hope to be getting better at other things. And I just kind of want to, get, I'm sort of weirdly like out of competition in a way. Like I want to compete with myself is my intention, to get better at the things that I do, to bring things more
I love that.
honestly into the world and more authentically and more truthfully and more bravely. I think if I'm being truthful and brave and like, you know, pushing myself, I feel like I'm onto a good thing. I mean, and then I don't know who I'm going to be. I have no idea. Because if I'm being truthful and brave, I'm probably going to be pushing through a bunch more ego shit that is still keeping me trapped.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There is no competition. The world
Isn't though. That's the
so
thing.
abundant and so wide open
know.
and so huge that's why I don't worry about a client leaving to go somewhere else. That's why I don't worry about other, people who do what I do in my sphere. I don't even think about it, because at the end of the day, if someone's chosen over me, fine. I wasn't meant to do it.
Of
whatever the
course.
reason be. Or I want to celebrate the success of people who are like me, as opposed to say, why not me? The why not me is only a question I ask for when it comes to the level of success that I want to achieve.
Yeah.
And that question is more like, why not me? Why
Yes.
can't
Yes.
I,
Yes.
be that person that I want to be? And so I admire greatly the people who find success in doing whatever they love to do. And so the only person that I'm running next to on the treadmill is myself.
Dude, me
That's
too.
it.
I think I honestly think it's like, it's both hugely inspiring and also hugely liberating to be able to hold
Yeah.
that as your kind of North Star. Because, I agree with you. The world is infinite. There's infinite possibilities. And I also feel like that place of competition and thinking that you have to like fight for your turf and fight for your space in the sun, it's just like, well, it's limiting the universe's potential to give you what you are, trying to create. And also it puts you in such a victim position where it's like,
Yep.
it's dependent on somebody else bestowing things upon you, where it's like, if we just are open to the fact that the universe is infinite possibilities, well then what can we make? How can we create those? How can we, what can we do to sort of birth new things into the world? Like that is, that's the
Absolutely.
sweetest thing, surely. I don't know.
I just believe so greatly in our own experience being our own. It doesn't matter where or how or the circumstances or however your life came to be. I believe that your experience is uniquely yours.
Yeah.
And so what you want in life is uniquely yours. And the only way you're going to get it is to make that decision that it has nothing to do with anything other than yourself and the decisions that you make for yourself. It takes so much fortitude and so much
Wow.
decision-making prowess to take the risks and take the leaps and go in that direction of your dreams. But the more you do it, it's like a muscle. The more used to it you get. And the more used to it you get, the more it makes sense and it just becomes a part of you. Abundance, gratitude are probably the two concepts that are the ones that are the driving force in my life at this point.
Do you feel like that? Do you feel like those are your kind of North Stars? I mean, do you feel like that's sort of what's setting your course?
Yeah, I spent, how many times I said before I had adjusted my thinking that how many times I put myself into a victim state. I wasn't getting the parts because of this. I wasn't rich because of that. I wasn't, whatever. I was playing the role of the victim in my own movie.
Me too, boo.
And it's crazy.
Me too. Yeah.
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 Which is crazy looking back on it, to think that that was where I was willing to allow my mind to go. That's
Well,
bonkers.
I don't think it is crazy. I think, we have to give ourselves buckets full of compassion, because
Sure.
I think we're also raised in a society, like a capitalist patriarchy, that kind of, it does encourage victimhood, because that's how we become profitable. That's how we become consumers. It's how we are driven to sort of, I don't know. Like, I think if I think about my victimness was drumming up a lot of support for beauty industries and skincare regime industries, and like all the things that I was being told were not good enough about me, or I was choosing to believe were not good enough about me, was making me a consumer in a weird way. So I think that the world kind of profits from us being victims. So it becomes a real act of defiance to sort of step out of that and step into power, because the more you can be in your own authority and in your power, the less people can sell shit to you, and the less they can make you think things that, and the less they can manipulate you, So
Yeah.
I think
that also,
it's hard.
to a certain extent, I would even go a step further and to say that to see, I don't care about, like, I don't get involved in or really think about politics or things along the lines of those big picture things, because I believe so strongly in my own ability to create the life that I want, that no one else affects me. And so that's where I think we could even get into the realm of, when we think about the world as trying to do something to us, could also be putting ourselves in the position of being a victim.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, I make videos to sell things to people. That's my
sure.
career.
For sure.
And so, but the thing is that it's a part of me coming into my own person and who I want to be, but also, we all want things.
Well, by the way,
all want stuff.
and also we're all trying to sell stuff. Like, let's be honest. I mean, we still live in a capitalist society. I'm not saying, like, peace out, I'm going to an island to go and, like, live off the land. Right. I ain't doing that. I'm still trying to sell movies. But I'm just saying, I think that sometimes the system can fuck with your head in a way, and can't mold you to be that sort of unconscious consumer, should we say. I do believe in consumerism, because, my God, we have to, like, the world has to go around in the way it is.
Yeah.
And I also have to acknowledge that, like, I am privileged. I'm a white woman who has not been systemically oppressed. So I am able to step out of my victimhood in a way that I think people of color or, people with different backgrounds and different cultural circumstances are not able to. So I do recognize that me stepping into power is actually a privileged position, and one that I don't take for granted, at all, because it really is. It's a privilege to be free, and to the degree that I am. There's always more. I still want to be free.
Definitely.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's where the idea that your experience is so valid comes into play for me, no matter who you are.
Of course.
Because no matter how privileged you objectively are, or how subjectively you feel, your experience is still yours.
Of course.
And as long as you're trying to be the best person, the kindest person, the most generous person, all of those things, then I don't worry too much about what privilege or not that you have in this world, because you see people come from the most dire of circumstances and become amazing versions of themselves, and you see people born into the most privileged circumstances become absolutely nothing or become terrible people. And so that's all to do with that own personal power, whether it's manifest or not.
I think it is to a degree, but I think there's a huge part of it too that is shaped by what you've had access to. I mean, for sure. Like, if you've had access to education and things that have been able to teach you this, you've had an opportunity to travel and see the world and, experience the world in a way that people who have been oppressed have not, I think that there's still givens in our lives as white people that, people of color don't have. So, I mean, I also want to be like, oh, it's all to do with the person, but on some levels it's like, it's actually not. Like, fuck, it's not. The system still fucks with so many people, And
the system always has, from the very beginning of time,
Yeah.
whatever was in charge was in charge. And that goes for every culture in every part of the world. One of my, dearest friends I made at the factory survived the genocide in the Sudan.
Holy shit.
And that was people who they all looked the same, but they had a different set of beliefs, and that's what caused it. My best friend Matt, his stepdad, fled the Hungarian Revolution. Same thing. It was all people who all looked the same, but it was just different tiers of power. And so to see so recently in our time those true civil wars, those true moments of, extreme dire circumstances that people had to flee is fascinating. We're going down a rabbit hole here, but
we are.
I saw a
post.
We mentioned last week, I think it was last week, maybe we had talked about we talked about the Super Bowl party.
Oh yes, yeah.
Or the Super Bowl halftime show rather, and how great it was and how cool it was, especially for people like us in the 30s and 40s, because it was like that was the stuff that was super cool when we were kids.
Yes, thank you.
But I saw someone post something and said that the Gen X millennials are the greatest and most resilient generation. And I was like,
so interesting.
What?
Yeah,
what?
What are you talking about? Like, we haven't had a world war. We've just survived a global pandemic with Zoom and a lot of masks and like access to like real healthcare. I'm like, really?
And Amazon.
I don't know about that. And I don't know about us being very resilient at all, actually. That's so interesting.
But it just showed me our inability as humans to remember the past if it was never a part of our purview. I was lucky enough to grow up with a grandfather who had been in World War II, and my friend Matt, his stepdad's world, and so I always knew about what pain and suffering and all the things were. And then our parents, my dad wasn't in Vietnam, but that generation was, and so you kind of had this idea of what was going on, but we haven't really had that thing in a very long time, other than the traumatic events of like 9/11 or something like that.
I will say, like, maybe my country has certainly had that. I mean, South Africa obviously has gone through.
Oh, sure.
Our democracy is pretty new. So I think for sure, not on a global level the way it was, but yeah, there's definitely been like atrocities and terrible shit happening. I think there's terrible shit happening all the time, but I think it's like, I don't know. I guess it's important to focus on like our experience, like you're saying, and like trying to find the meaning amidst all of this, and like the connection and the I don't know, like the beauty in the world. Like, why are we here? What is this all for? And I think that's what makes us artists, and what makes us want to kind of be a part of this, is to try and, I don't know, create some understanding, to find some understanding about all of this, like to make some meaning out of this bizarreness, because it is like people want to hate on each other and do terrible shit, and like, then there's a virus that shuts us all down, and we find connection. I don't know. It's just, it's so like being a human being is the most complicated fucking thing you can do. Like it's so complicated, and it's so layered. And I think just to try and understand our humanity and our purpose and all of it is just like, all I can think to do is make art about it, really. That's the honest to God truth. I think I'm just trying to understand the point of all of this.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Totally trying to figure out that and sort of your own path, while also being, the best, most generous, kindest person.
Yeah.
Because it can be very hard, because we like to faction ourselves into different areas and stuff. And I think that's what has inspired us to do this podcast too, is to have conversations with people, understand what it is that makes them tick and drives them, and to find that best version of themselves that they've been, striving towards.
Yeah. And I like the idea that we're sort of talking to a cross section of people from, all different walks of lives and all different ethnicities. And, we're really sort of trying to bring voices that, maybe people haven't heard before or sit down and listen to. And it's just nice to sort of have deeper conversations with people from different places in the world, because I really think it's what you were saying earlier about your trip around your world travels. I think it shatters that perspective that you have on the planet, because I think when our worlds are just, our neighborhood and maybe our county, you can get a little limited in the way you see things. But when you have a conversation with other people, it's just you know, thing. I think it only ever. I mean, that's what I love about you saying about your hometown being so diverse and stuff. Because I just feel like when you include other perspectives, your life expands because of it. You know, and I think your life becomes richer because you get to see that it's not all one way, and there's so many different ways to do things. You know, America's really, you know, I mean, obviously you've been growing up in South Africa and now having a life in America. Like, I feel like America's really given me the freedom to be a person that I never ever thought I'd be able to be. You know, which is strange because there's certain people say a lot of shitty things about America, you know, and I know America's got a lot of problems. Everywhere's got a lot of problems. But I think that the one thing that I love so much about this country is that it's just given me permission in a way that I don't think I ever would have had permission from where I'm from, you know, to just be fully myself, you know, and express it in kind of in an unashamed way. It's like really magical, actually.
How so? Because I think that's beautiful. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I come from a very, very conservative place. So South Africa, obviously, you know, we had apartheid and had this terrible system, terrible fucking racist, awful system that governed our country for a long time. But we were colonized by... well, my ancestors were the colonizers. Spoiler alert, I'm white. So we were colonized by the Dutch, we were colonized by the English, by a whole bunch of different people. So we actually have like 11 official languages in South Africa, which is nuts to think that our country is just the size of Texas and we have 11 different official languages. Like, it's mental. So the fact that we even get along now is just, it's wild. But I'm from an old English community. So Durban is very much like, you know, ancient England. Like, it's very still mannered and kind of, you know, everyone's concerned about what everyone thinks and what everyone says, and it's very much you know, it's a little gossipy, and it's kind of like I mean, I think in some ways it's a little like the South, you know. There's that sort of mannered bless your heart type thing, you know, but then there's a lot of stuff happening under the surface. And so I grew up being very scared of what people thought of me, you know, and trying to fit a version of what I thought was pleasing and good to the world. And I think coming here and kind of being so far away from home, and then also just being in an environment like Los Angeles, come on now. I mean, no one cares. Everyone's just like, be you, unashamedly, you know, find this version of yourself and put it out there, which was, it's terrifying to me, you know, initially. But now I really have, like, I feel like this environment gave me that. That's the gift that America's given me, you know. South Africa made me who I was, and America let me be that person.
I love that.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
How
does it...
Oh.
I was gonna say, how do you check yourself then? Because I think that Los Angeles can be its own... It can be quite an echo chamber, but it can also be a bit of a bubble. So how do you check yourself to make sure that you're keeping perspective? Well,
I still have relationships with people from other places, you know. So I still have... I mean, I have a company in... So I started a production company in South Africa, and so I have a business partner there and developing a slate of work in South Africa. So I still have sort of a lot to do with where I'm from. And I have a lot of really honest, great friends. You know, I have a lot of people who are not, you know, who are kind, but kind in the true sense of the word, you know. So I don't think kindness is just being nice to people all the time. I think kindness is oftentimes being honest when it's hard, you know. And I have a lot of those people around me, and I hang on to them because I think that it is so important to check yourself, you know, and to make sure that you're not just, I don't know, repeating things that come in, you know, like you say, in that sort of echo chamber way. Do you have those kind of relationships? I mean, do you have the same sort of thing where you sort of have, I don't know, checking conversations with your friends? Do you feel like?
I think that we just do it for each other naturally.
Right.
I think because I have so many friends who are not particularly, they haven't put a shell around themselves. They're open and free and question everything and want to talk about everything in the freest ways. And I have, you know, married friends with kids, single friends with not. I have all this wide array of beautiful people that are in my sphere that all have unique points of view. And living in a part of the world that is very opposite to Los Angeles, I kind of get a dose of perspective every single day. Yeah. So I'm always in that thing. So, but then my wide array of friends have this beautiful expansive knowledge of whatever it is that they know and stuff. And, a couple of very, very close friends that I will reach out to in times of kind of questioning the direction that I'm doing things and stuff for that perspective. And one of my most influential friends is, he's the guy who introduced me to like, people like Bob Proctor and, Joe Dispenza and stuff like that. So it's, that's a different level of impact when a person is giving you, instead of advice, saying, here, read this book by this brilliant person.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing. So
I love it. I love a friend who's prepared to teach you how to fish and not like just put it on your plate. It's really wonderful. I think it's this. I think those are the most treasured relationships, to be honest, because it's somebody who's looking at you and knowing, but not just saying it and solving it. They're like waiting for you to get there because it's way more powerful every time. That's so cool. I love that.
That was something that happened before I moved here with this particular friend was exactly that. My friend Matt, essentially, it came to a head in our relationship where it was like, all right, dude, like I've given you all of these fishing lessons and you still refuse to go out fishing. I might have to just get off the boat if you don't get your shit together. And it wasn't words, it wasn't actions, it was just a look. And I knew it. And I knew that I had gone to the depths of, a friendship that it was like, you got to change or things are going to, change. And so I did. And that was, an incredibly intensely impactful moment in my life. That's for remarkable. Sure. So, yeah. I
mean, and by the way, how brave is that also in some ways it's like, I just love it when people trust the bonds of relationships in that way, where they go like, oh, I trust the bond that we have, that I'm prepared to push it to know that person will, come along. That's really beautiful. I mean, my God, let them all be this magical, these relationships.
I know.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Well, that's what we're digging into on this here show. So I'm so excited to be doing this with you.
Me too.
Speaking of treasured friendships.
Me too. I couldn't think of another person I'd rather be doing this with, honest to gosh. And thank you for forcing me to do this, because Matt has been bugging me for a while. I bugged him. Now he's bugging me. So I'm very glad that...
Well, we started the conversation a while ago, and then it just kind of happened. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go forward with this thing. Do you still think you might want to do it? And I'm so glad that you said yes.
Yeah, me too. This is so wonderful. And honestly, these conversations have been so joyful to me. And I hope to keep having as much fun with this. And I hope that everybody enjoys listening to them as much as we've had the pleasure of making them. My God.
Me too. So the plan is weekly conversations with creatives of all sorts, sort of digging into their process. Yes. We're, as of release of this one, we also have Amanda Payton, which is our first interview ever, and then just a beautiful slew of humans to come after that.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, like a lovely cross-section of kind of chefs and writers and makers and, so I'm excited. Well, this has been wonderful, and I'm glad we got a chance to chat to one another.
Me too.
And I can't wait to keep doing it every week.
Yay.
From my closet here in Los Angeles to your magical studio in Colorado.
Come into the world.
The Makers Podcast. Oh, man. All right. Well, I sure do love you. And my gosh, let this fly, our sweet little podcast. Let it fly.
Let it fly. Exactly. Let's see what wings it can grow.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.